never laugh as a hearse goes by, for you may be the next to die. They wrap you up in bloody sheets to drop you 6 feet underneath. They put you in a pine wood box and cover you up with dirt and rocks. It all goes well for about a week, and then your coffin begins to leak, and the worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, the worms play pinochle on your snout. They eat your eyes, they eat your nose as you begin to decompose. A slimy beetle with demon's eyes chews through your stomach and out your sides. Your stomach turns to rancid grease, and pus pours out like melted cheese. You spread it on a slice of bread, and that's what you'll eat when you're dead. And the worms crawl out, the worms crawl in, the worms that crawl in are lean and thin, the ones that crawl out are fat and stout. Your eyes fall in and your hair falls out. Your brain turns into maggot pie, your liver starts to liquefy, and for the living all is well as you sink further into hell. And the flames rise up to drag you down into the fire where you will drown. Your skin melts off as you descend, and Satan tears you limb from limb. Your suffering will never end. And the worms crawl in, the worms crawl out. They'll eat your guts and then shit them out. And when your bones begin to rot, the worms remain, but you do not. So don't ever laugh as a hearse goes by, for someday you'll be the one to die. And when death brings his cold despair, ask yourself, will anyone care? Don't ever laugh as a hearse goes by, for you may be the next to die. They wrap you up in bloody sheets to drop you 6 feet underneath. They put you in a pine wood box and cover you up with dirt and rocks. It all goes well for about a week, and then your coffin begins to leak, and the worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, the worms play pinochle on your snout. They eat your eyes, they eat your nose as you begin to decompose. A slimy beetle with demon's eyes chews through your stomach and out your sides. Your stomach turns to rancid grease, and pus pours out like melted cheese. You spread it on a slice of bread, and that's what you'll eat when you're dead. And the worms crawl out, the worms crawl in, the worms that crawl in are lean and thin, the ones that crawl out are fat and stout. Your eyes fall in and your hair falls out. Your brain turns into maggot pie, your liver starts to liquefy, and for the living all is well as you sink further into hell. And the flames rise up to drag you down into the fire where you will drown. Your skin melts off as you descend, and Satan tears you limb from limb. Your suffering will never end. And the worms crawl in, the worms crawl out. They'll eat your guts and then shit them out. And when your bones begin to rot, the worms remain, but you do not. So don't ever laugh as a hearse goes by, for someday you'll be the one to die. And when death brings his cold despair, ask yourself, will anyone?
All right. How you guys doing? Saw some speculation about me possibly showing up in the Freddy costume. Not yet. We're not doing that yet. Actually, let me fix this because I was doing something with the camera. There we go. Kind of looks like it's looking directly at me now. But shit, man, how you guys doing? Let me see who all we got in here. So we got Devin, Nicholas, Nightmare. How you doing? All the way over from Twitch, Brandon Morrissey. Yeah, man, I love Freddy. I love Freddy too. Stay tuned. I got some special stuff coming with Freddy, with both Dark Theories videos and the full costume reveal once I get all the other pieces. Contacts are almost here. I got a message from the mask maker that's making my silicone mask. Says it's not going to be too much longer from now, so hopefully that comes in within the next 2-3 weeks, maybe. And then we'll be doing nothing but DVD as Freddy that entire night in costume for as long as I can take it. What's going on, Pugster? Maybe a dress? Not yet. Not unless we set a sub goal or something like that for that. I'll do it though. How about some DVD? We'll do some DVD. Thinking we might do some DVD or some more Man and Medan tomorrow. And then we'll do some Ash vs. the Evil Dead on Thursday. What's going on, Haley? What's going on, Cat? What's going on, Machete? What else we got? Oh, shit. I imagine the Haley. Especially if you've been waiting for Freddy on the Switch for that long, you see his name pop up on any kind of patch notes. It's like, yeah, but you're still not getting him on the Switch. What is going on, Dead Corpse? How you doing? Pugster says, love the background. Thank you. I just feel like arms are just like everywhere. Like I can like give Freddy a high five. Brandon says, man, this makes me want to watch him again. Oh, man. If you do, I do have commentaries on all of the Nightmare films. I even did Freddy vs. Jason twice. Feel free to watch those with them. Or who knows, maybe come October, maybe we'll pick a specific movie from each of the big titles like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and we'll redo a commentary over them just for October. But it'll only be like one from every series. What is my favorite one? Part 2. I love Part 2. Which is why that is the costume I'm putting together, Brandon. Which if you haven't seen my partial reveal, I did get my teeth in for Freddy. I did put that picture on the community tab of my YouTube page. It's on my Instagram. And in my Facebook group and Facebook page as well. Feel free to check it out. All links on Twitch should be down below. How did I fix my teeth? They're veneers. Basically, hard plastic that you can soften with a plastic on the backside that you can kind of turn into like a clear liquid goo. And you just put it on the back of the teeth and mold it to your teeth. I know, we can still hear the song. We're vibing. We're vibing, Nicholas. Unless it's fucking with you guys. Like you guys can't hear me. Then we can pop that shit right off. Freddy makes my fleshy hole moist. From what I understand, you're not the only one, Pug. Not much, Machete. Not much. How are you doing? What's going on, Anthony? Freddy in space. I mean... Not really, because it doesn't really work in the kind of continuity that they set for Freddy being trapped in Springwood. So the only way you can get kind of Freddy in space is if you pull a Brainiac and you pull Springwood from the Earth and take it with you in a spaceship. Which, no, don't really want it. I mean, Freddy versus Jason kind of fucked the continuity on that, because technically there's no way Freddy should have gotten to Camp Crystal Lake in any regard. But that movie's a continuity mess anyway. I mean, it's a one-shot movie. It's not good. It's not canon to either series in my mind. What's going on, Nemesis? How you doing? How's the streams going, my friend? Haven't actually been able to watch too many. I get the alerts and I pop in for a little bit, but I know you do them sometimes pretty late. So like I'm either working on something and I can't really chat much, or I'm like part asleep. But yeah, welcome. Which Nemesis does, I believe, have his own streams going on Twitch. So feel free to give him a follow. And Nemesis, if I believe you're part of the Facebook group, the Hordes of Horror, feel free to drop your link in there. That's what it's for. Drop your link in there, get some people watching. Let's keep the conversations going. Machete says, I got a new phone and I got DVD on mobile. Nice. I tried DVD on mobile. I can't get into it. I can't. What's going on, Kevin AK? How you doing? Hey there, Master Wayne. Coming back to Chile soon. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the pepper to call. I'm waiting. I know I'm supposed to come around there when Brandy's working at some point. I gotta drop off a movie tour. But once, I guess we're not going to see any kind of movement until our part of the state goes in green. But if I get the whole Freddy costume, you never know. I might be over there clinging on the windows with the glove. That could be something. Have to wait for a Kelsey shift. What's going on, Dark Super? How you doing? Chucky in space? That would probably end up a lot like Leprechaun in space. I would anything space, unless it's a sci-fi kind of property, I really wouldn't touch it, just because it's a gimmick. It's a gimmick that doesn't work for things that are not made for it. Haley. Like, why even mention on the Switch patch notes? I don't know. Maybe they got plans for the 4th anniversary to bring Freddy to the Switch, and they're just holding on to him for that. Machete. Also, I just recreated the Shape Hunt Allison on GarageBand. Really? Nice. I love that. I love that part of the soundtrack. Super Cat. Unfortunately, I am not as cultured with Freddy compared to Jason, so I probably don't have many good questions. Well, that's why it's also good to be in the chat for these kind of Let's Talks. Because, I mean, I'm not considered by all means a Freddy expert. I like the series. I'm pretty knowledgeable in the series. But when compared to Friday the 13th, I'm not at the same level. So I'm kind of in the same boat with you on that, but I do consider myself, I do have a plethora of knowledge when involving A Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't consider myself an expert. Friday the 13th commentaries again? Some of them. We might do some of them. Try to catch up on everybody. I would like to see a Nightmare game like Friday the 13th. Wouldn't be bad, but I think single license games need to be story-based for the most part. I mean, the multiplayer aspect is fun, but the thing, like I said, with Friday the 13th, and even I think Predator's kind of running into, is a lot of just rinse and repeat. It's the same thing over and over and over and over. Granted, Dead by Daylight, your objectives are the same over and over and over, but the overall game is always different. Unless you're getting the same killer over and over and over. Then it starts hitting that same stride. But the thing with Dead by Daylight in comparison to something like Friday the 13th or Predator or any other real asymmetrical horror game, aside from Hide or Die, they have some, I think, unique abilities too. But With Jason, you're just going against skins. Some are quicker than others, some have more bear traps than others. But ultimately, they all have the same abilities. If they would have added a unique ability to every single Jason, like just unique to that particular Jason, I think Friday the 13th would have stood a lot longer longevity than Dead by Daylight probably would have. But Dead by Daylight is getting all these other licensed characters, so now they're just adding and adding and adding to the popularity of it, which once we see what this next licensed character is going to be, I'm going to be very interested in how they kind of flip the powers a bit. Because you figure, how many other powers can you add? Like, what else can you do? Is Freddy a child molester? It's never said in the original series, but it is hinted at a lot. Freddy's Revenge, in my opinion, has the best demonic looking Freddy. That's why that's the costume I'm putting together, Nemesis. I love that version of Freddy. That's why I'm even getting the contact lenses. I got the teeth. Waiting for the silicone mask, the burned hand. I can't wait. Leprechaun versus the Djinn. I'd probably kind of go with the Djinn because I know the Leprechaun can be killed, but the original Djinn, as he says, you cannot kill that which is eternal. So unless you count 4 and 5 or 3, 4, and 5, which completely fucked the series. Brandon Morrissey, can I add you on Steam? Sure, yeah, definitely. Go for it. Haley, no, I'm telling you, it might happen. I could be completely wrong, but I would not be surprised if at the anniversary they do announce Freddy coming to Switch. Why is Freddy stuck in Springwood, but Jason isn't stuck in Crystal Lake? Because Jason is a corporeal being. Freddy is an astral being. So, like, pretty much Freddy is bound by the limitations of the place of his death, that border. Jason is a living person. Well, was a living person. He's a physical being that was brought back reanimated flesh. So technically, when he was reanimated, he wasn't even reanimated in Crystal Lake. He was reanimated in the cemetery. So if you wanted to use that same kind of sense, wherever the cemetery is located, he possibly should be haunting that instead of Camp Crystal Lake. But because he is a physical being, he's not bound by the same boundaries that Freddy is. Freddy, Hellraiser in Space wasn't very good, at least in my opinion. Hellraiser in Space worked from the aspect of the story made sense of how they got there. Execution, not done that well. Because we go from the origin of the box, the origin of the Cenobites, or not the origin of the Cenobites, but the princess of hell coming with the box and so forth, and then it turns into a body count film at the end. Which shouldn't have. It should have kept that same kind of flow going. I say 2/3 of that film is pretty good. The last third just completely shot its load. Just was not good at all. It was just a splatterfest. JG in Space. Thoughts on the ending of Freddy vs. Jason with Freddy's head winking. Do you think that's showing the audience, showing he's still alive, or just a thing for the audience? Well, the whole thing is with that, the ending of Freddy vs. Jason was that Freddy, we've seen him get pulled out of the dream world already. So what's the difference of Freddy being pulled out of the dream world in part 1, unless you go by my theory that he was never pulled out of the dream world in part 1, that was still a dream and he was fucking with Nancy, or say part 6 where his daughter pulls him out of the dream and kills him. What's the difference between that and Freddy vs. Jason? He dies in both. He gets pulled out of the dream and dies in both of which not being in Springwood. So it doesn't make sense that we should believe that he's dead. So him winking at the end, kind of, it would be canon. It would be right. But like I said, I don't consider neither one of those series, neither one of the characters in that movie or that entire movie in general canon to either series. Your name is Old Greg on Steam, by the way, Brandon. All right, nice. When I play Dead by Daylight on Steam, if you're on, feel free to shoot me an invite. How old are you? Just to be sure, so I know if I can have you on comms or not. That is a perk for, I believe, tier 1 or 2 members on YouTube. So, I mean, I can play with you, but members only get those kind of perks. I'm also playing DBD at the moment. Nice, Haley. Nice. Freddy won. Freddy versus Jason. In all honesty, yeah, he did. The fight as it stood, although it shouldn't have happened, Freddy pretty much beat the shit out of Jason. With full honesty, he beat the shit out of Jason. Jason had the advantage in the cabin, and he beat the hell out of Freddy in the cabin itself. Once they got out of the cabin and Freddy killed Kia, once Freddy started fucking shanking the shit out of him and doing all kinds of fucking back kicks and elbow drops and everything, he kept moving because it was one of those things that if Freddy knew he stopped moving, Jason was going to kill him. And this to me is why I kind of hated the movie, is because they slowed Jason down so much. They made him a Frankenstein monster to the degree to give Freddy the advantage in order to do that. And I hated that because at no point in time in any of the other movies, this counts Jason X, this counts Jason Goes to Hell, the New Line films, and any of the Paramount films, did Jason ever move that slow when killing people or going after anyone. And also, you mean to tell me that Freddy's moves, back kicks, slices, and all of that is that much more effective than what Julius was doing, where Jason was just eating the punches? The slices, yeah, I can grant you that. But the back kicks, he kicked Jason in the stomach and Jason bent over you're not breathing. What are you holding your gut for? Dead Corpse says, I honestly think part 2 is better than part 3. Me too, to the degree that I think part 3 is more entertaining, but part 2 is the better horror movie, in my opinion. Giving Freddy 2 gloves in Mortal Kombat game. Jason kind of thick, though. I think they should put Victor Crowley in Dead by Daylight. Victor Crowley would work. He's just not a classic license. So I think Victor Crowley will come at some point, especially if the lawsuit for Friday the 13th drags on more and more, just to get a Kane Hodder character put into the game. They will put Victor Crowley in. That's what I think. Ron Jeremy in space? I'm surprised it hasn't been done yet. In space, nobody can hear you moan. What do you think of Dream Master Nightmare 4? Aside from the dog pissing to bring him back, it was decent enough, especially how he goes through the surviving Dream Warriors. I just don't get the I don't get why he's doing what he's doing, where he's killing off the last kids of Elm Street. I don't see why we went from Kristen being the last one and now we're passing dream powers to people. You would think if that was an ability, that possibly the Dream Warriors would have combined their powers into Kristen being the Dream Master and had her face off against Freddy in part 3 and ultimately having as much power as Freddy. Because, you look at all the Dream Warriors together, they would have probably have been able to combine their powers into a collective effort that would have been able to combat the powers of Freddy. That's why I thought it would probably go that way. But then you have Freddy that's reliant on going after the bloodline of the people of Springwoods, so to speak. So you would think once you get down to 2-3 members left, hang back a little bit. Why don't we let them repopulate? And then I come back again, get a little bit more power, let them repopulate again, come back again. Almost crowd control for Freddy, so to speak. But once they started getting into he needs Alice, Alice gains the powers of Kristen, and Kristen's dead, gone. Now Alice is feeding Freddy. That kind of missed for me. Hey, what's going on, Matthew? How you doing? What's up, Lord JG? Brandon says, I'm 21, but I don't have Dead by Daylight. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. You can still add me on there, and whenever you get DBD, let me know. Or just pop in, watch me play. However you want to do it. Do you have Xbox, Brandon? Or do you have the Ultimate Xbox Pass? Because if you have the Ultimate Xbox Pass, which I think is like $10 a month or something like that, you do get DVD free on there. Doesn't have any of the DLC, but you do get DVD as a part of that. Just to let you know. So that way you don't have to pay the full, like, I think it's like $40 for DVD. You can pay the 10, probably get the DLC later on down the road, and you at least have DVD. And if they ever take it off there, you already have all the DLC that you accumulated. Just pop in the 40, 30, $20 or whatever, how much it costs at that time, and then grab the game, and then you're good to go. And if you do it on PC, assuming because you have Steam, you do it through the Windows Store, it is crossplay. So I don't know if we could play together in that sense, but I do know it is crossplay. We should be able to somehow get that connected. Badges. Yeah, Matthew, you see the new badge. I got the Michael Myers badge up there. What do we got? Damn torpedoes. Yes, and he insisted on having to use his machete. Anyone who knows Jason knows he'll use any weapon. Exactly. Jason is not as attached to the machete as Freddy versus Jason, and even Jason X will have you believe. Jason, I mean, look at the first 6, 7 films, even 8, all 8 films, all the original continuity films. How many times did he use a machete for a kill? But then we go into Freddy versus Jason. He does use some other weapons, but every time you see him, he's holding that fucking machete. And that's not really right for the character. Like, he was even buried with the machete. Now, that was another thing. Another difference with how Jason Goes to Hell does not connect to Freddy versus Jason. We know when Jason comes back in his full form at the end of Jason Goes to Hell, he gets stabbed with the dagger. He's weaponless. He's unarmed. The demons drag him down to hell. But when he rises up from the grave, when Freddy resurrects him, just nudges him like, wake up, mother needs you to do things. He wakes up, mask still there, hasn't been dragged to hell, dagger not in his heart, but yet his machete is there. Where the fuck did the machete come from? I mean, did his sister's body spit it out at some point in time later on, and it just happened to get enough distance to hit the grave? Like, I'm not so sure about that. Do you think Super Freddy ever make a return? I doubt it, to be honest. As much as I like Super Freddy, I think it was a one and done kind of thing. What do you think Jason has been doing with Freddy's head ever after Freddy versus Jason? Wink, wink. My guess is he's probably doing some things. I mean, I don't think it's anything you're thinking of, because I think that rotted off long ago. Unless regenerative powers brought that back, because he's a growing boy. He's got needs. Ethan says, well, Nightmare 4 did not have a complete screenplay, and the director, Rennie Harlan, was forced to create the crazy scenes in that movie. I think it's very fun, though. It's the MTV Freddy movie. I actually say the MTV Freddy movie is part 3. To me, that screams it. I mean, granted, part 4 does have an MTV scene in it, like on the commercial before they kill Joey. But I still hold that as part 3. Same thing with like part 6, part 3, and part 6, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street part 3. Those 2 movies are the biggest mainstream movies of those particular series. Glad you love the Michael badge. Like, I was like pretty much up a little bit later the other night, like shading it in, hoping that it looked right, especially when it's like that small, but I love it. Hellraiser Pinhead was supposed to be at the end of Freddy vs. Jason, what they scrapped. Yeah, they did say that was going to be a possibility, but they also said that they wanted to focus on Freddy and Jason. Bringing in another character would have just took the focus off the 2 main characters, which I agree. I do agree. It would have been a nice holy shit moment, but I am actually glad that that did not happen, considering that we never got a sequel. I think Freddy vs. Jason was more of a Freddy movie, if you ask me. I'm a big Jason fan, and the movie pisses me off every time I watch it. On the Jason side of the movie, I think Freddy is good, though. Yeah, definitely. It was definitely made to be a Freddy movie. They gave Jason the consolation prize of having the kill count, but it was definitely all about Freddy. The whole plot was centered around Freddy. It was a Freddy movie with featuring Jason. Like, it just should have been a Nightmare on Elm Street on Friday the 13th. Well, I mean, granted, they couldn't do that because New Line doesn't own the Friday the 13th name, which is why they had to go with Freddy versus Jason. But they should have probably have just gone with like something a Nightmare on Elm Street-esque and just made it closer to a sequel to Freddy's Dead and just brought Jason in as sort of a side story to keep the plot going. But they had to capitalize on Freddy versus Jason. Freddy was still alive, headless. Only in the dream world. In the physical plane, his body is dead. Which I'm wondering if anybody, because Camp Crystal Lake seems to swallow bodies. I'm wondering if Freddy's body ever gets found, or if the lake, if they're I mean, it's New Line, it's not. I wouldn't be surprised if they go with the whole Deadeye thing like they did with the comics with Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. But you would wonder what kind of things could go on in this sense of Freddy's living dead body pulled out of the dream world, already supernatural, dropping into the lake where Jason drowned and he came back from the dead. Supposedly, because I believe in the New Line films, they used the whole thing that Jason was dead when he drowned in 1957 and Pamela's death is what brought him back to life. They used that origin. It's more ambiguous in the Paramount films, but the Paramount films and New Line films, as I've stated at great length in some videos and even on some streams, those films are not canon to each other. Favorite Spider-Man villain goes between Venom and Carnage. That would have been cool too, Tyrell. Pretty much Freddy controlling Jason's body. But you wonder why he didn't do that. Because you would figure Freddy would want the power of Jason in the physical plane on top of the dream world. He would be racking up double kills. And the whole movie could have been Jason is under Freddy's control, or the body is under Freddy's control. Freddy is the one driving Jason's body and doing all these kills and everything. And ultimately, once kids are dreaming, they find that Jason, almost in kid form, if you wanted to use Jason kid form version, locked in a dream prison inside the dream world. And the only way for Jason to gain control back of his body is if one of these characters release him. And he's able, and like when he steps out of the prison, he's full grown, like part 3 Jason, like living still in his own mind. Because I mean, the whole thing is like from 1984 to present day, he's only in his mind lived for a couple days, like after those events of part 4. Because I mean, he rises up, gets killed again, rises up, gets killed again. So he hasn't been alive in the undead state for that long of a particular period. So in his mind, he would still look the way he looked when he first put on the hockey mask. Because, I mean, he also wore the clothes and everything, and I have no doubt he probably looked at himself in a mirror and so forth, and probably sees himself as still that part 3 living Jason, and ultimately gains control of his body. Oh, thank you for the follow, Aqua Garden. Thank you, thank you. Used to have my OBS over here, but now I have it over here. So I'm like, looking, like, where's that coming from? But yeah, that would have been that was a, I would say, a definite missed opportunity. I'm a Friday fan, Friday franchise fan. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. And while I love them in their own right, I'd say in no particular order, my favorite movies with Jason are 2, 3, 4, and 6. It's not a bad lineup. Not a bad lineup. And the Freddy vs. Jason novel, the bodies in the lake was Jason's subconscious. It wasn't bodies in the lake. Are you saying when Freddy goes into Jason's mind in the dream world? Because I know that. I think you kind of misunderstood what I said when bodies seem to disappear in the lake. I get that in the dream world, that when Jason opens up the closet and it's like in the lake and you see all like hundreds of bodies in the lake. I know that's in his subconscious. What I'm talking about is when Jason drowned. If we're going by New Line's timeline, Jason drowned, nobody found his body. Pamela dies, Jason comes back from the dead. So apparently he was still there. Part 7, if we consider that canon to everything overall, if we consider New Line Films canon to everything overall, Tina's father went into the lake and disappeared. Nobody found the body. Tina resurrects Jason's father. Oh, not Jason, Tina's father. Tina resurrects her own father to combat Jason at the end of part 7. They take Jason into the bottom of the lake, but yet neither one are found. That's what I mean. Like, it kind of eats up the bodies, but releases them later on. Like when it's convenient. When I first came to this channel, I was the one of those people who said Paramount Films and New Line Films were not connected. But you've convinced me that they're not. Oh, you said they were connected, but you convinced me that they're not. Oh, I mean, to me, the evidence is there, and it kind of lends itself to that when you start looking at all the details, especially when it comes to the New Line Films and its continuity issues when it comes to the Paramount Films. So for me, I've always believed that. Oh, thank you again for the sub, Nightmare. I thought you already subbed. But you know what? Fuck it. I love the alert, so I'll take it. I missed all your comments. If it winks, it stinks. But then Jason really wouldn't be Jason. Yes, at the beginning, it wouldn't be Jason, but the whole thing is, with the movie title Freddy vs. Jason, you're leading up to that fight. So once Jason takes back control of his body, he can weaken Freddy in the dream world enough for one of the characters to pull Freddy out of the dream world and then carry on the reality fight between the two. Because then, could you imagine that whole thing where fucking Freddy fights Jason in the dream world, holding his own. Interference is in there where Freddy begins to lose a bit and ultimately gets dragged to the real world, expecting to see part 3 living Jason, and you fuck around and see part 7 version of Jason waiting for him on the other side. That would have been pretty cool, even though Freddy should have known that because he would be in control of Jason's body. But just having the dichotomy of looks would be awesome. Lots of subconscious shit in Freddy vs. Yeah, I agree. What's going on, Vibe Chat? I seen you in there. I just didn't say hi yet, so I tried to get around to it. In the comic Wildstorm Friday the 13th, there's thousands of bodies in the lake from eras before Jason. I do remember that. That was, I believe Wildstorm also did Badland too, didn't they? They did Badland and Pamela's Tale. Both great comics. I definitely recommend reading those. Robert says, I'm pretty sure Michael Myers wears socks and underwear. Freddy Krueger probably does too. I mean, Freddy has an undershirt, so you would assume. Especially when you look at it in Freddy vs. Jason, Part 2. I believe Freddy's Dead, all of which Freddy's shirt comes up and you can see the undershirt underneath. What's going on, Trey Henry? How you doing? And Paris says, I still say Jason Goes to Hell is the only one that isn't canon. I mean, maybe, but my thing is still, because Jason X doesn't exactly go against anything continuity-wise, for the most part, especially if you believe in the whole regeneration thing. But it's just something off about that, where New Line, it just feels like, well, one, actually, the whole gimmick thing. Two, once we get, I mean, I grant you, the camp hologram scene, that is the most Friday the 13th-esque thing that we've felt since the beginning of Jason Goes to Hell. But there's just something off about it that once we get into space and nanites and taking something as simple as a campground supernatural killer that's supposed to be a camp story kind of tale and taking it into space and cryogenic freezing and all of this and all of that, it just doesn't hit right with me. That I can't look at Friday the 13th part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 even, and look at Jason X and say, yeah, that's part of the same series. Like, it just doesn't hit that kind of way for me. But I mean, everyone's different. Everyone is different. It's diverging universes with alternative characters like Ash and Marvel Zombies versus... Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I look at it. Although, because New Line wasn't able to use any of the derivative characters from the first films or anything like that, they weren't able to use Tommy Jarvis. They weren't able to use Reggie the Reckless. They weren't able to use Jenny Field. They weren't able to use any of those characters in film. They could use them in comic books, much like they did with Ash. They were able to use Ash in comic books, but they were not able to use they weren't even able to use Shelley because they don't own the rights to those films in New Line. They just own the rights to Jason wearing the mask, Pamela Voorhees, Camp Crystal Lake, and essentially that's it. So in the New Line timeline, I kind of look at it as a diverging timeline. It diverges from the point Jason drowns, and maybe some parts of part 1, maybe part 1 in total happen in that timeline. And Jason rises up from the lake, maybe grabs a different counselor because I don't know if they're able to use Alice. And it diverges from there. Jason gets the mask differently. At some point in time, he comes across Creighton Duke and so forth from there. But I don't think any of the films in the original continuity from the Paramount films really, like, those events don't really happen. there's a Jason, Freddy, Michael, and Leatherface that exist in the Child's Play universe. Yes, yeah, I believe you're referring to the locker scene from Bride of Chucky. Why Jason didn't go back to Mrs. Voorhees? Because she's dead. I mean, technically, he did go back to her. I'm guessing what you mean is when he was alive. Why didn't he go back? And that's likely because he's an 11-year-old kid, scared, lost in the woods, doesn't know his way. Probably got further and further lost. I mean, look how easy it was for people to get lost in Blair Witch. They literally took a step into the forest, and that was a supernatural forest. Who's to say Camp Crystal Lake isn't a supernatural forest? I mean, it did help bring back an undead killer. So, I mean, there's probably some other things at play that kept Jason separated from Pamela. Just came back. What'd you miss? I was still talking the same shit, Super Cat. The poltergeist of the deceased rises out of Crystal Lake. It appears to drown people or just floats over the water in the comic. Which comic is that? Because I'm not placing that. Show me your knees for cheese balls. I will not. Jason Gray's tummy thick. I'm trying to slim down, no. Quarantine got me eating. Got me eating good. Robert says, on Freddy vs. Jason, they didn't show the old footage of Friday the 13th movies, but they showed Nightmare on Elm Street footage movies. Yes, that's because New Line doesn't own the rights to use that footage. That is why we did not get an actual title Friday the 13th movie until the remake, and that was only because they partnered with Paramount. Tyrone says, I wish Jesse and Lisa returned to Elm Street, to the Elm Street series and ignored the suspect homosexual overtones, because the film to me was the scariest. I mean, the homosexual overtones I kind of found intriguing on that, because that is a catalyst to how Freddy was able to fuck with Jesse so much. Because think of it, you got a think of the what's the word, symbolicness of that, where you have someone that isn't exactly comfortable with their own identity. They are not in complete acknowledgement of their own sexuality. They're going after this girl. They are probably just doing that because they're told that that's what they should do. Guys going after girls. In actuality, he was probably in love with his friend Grady. And because he kept repressing his true identity, it allowed Freddy to take control of himself. So basically, it's the whole thing. Get control of yourself or someone will do it for you, so to speak. Freddy was able to use that weakness against Jesse. And the whole thing afterwards, to me, at the end, I felt like Freddy still should have had a grip on Jesse, because it was Lisa's love for Jesse that released Jesse from Freddy's grasp. That is what happened with that. Freddy loved Lisa to an extent, or maybe Jesse. I keep saying Freddy. The names are weird. Jesse probably did love Lisa in maybe a bisexual kind of way. Who's to say he was full on gay or anything like that? Maybe he was bisexual. He loved both Lisa and Grady, and he was wrestling with that identity as well. So I think keeping that is probably best, and actually expanding on that in the future would probably be good if they were to come back. What's going on, Blum? Say you love the background. I do too, man. Let me give Freddy a high five. High fiving Freddy. But welcome to the stream, my friend. I'm hoping you're enjoying all the Freddy talk. will we ever see the ending to the Friday the 13th lawsuit in our lifetime? Yes, we will. That I think we will. I think once we get the ruling in, I guess it was supposed to be June, maybe July, that we're supposed to get the full-on ruling. I don't see, unless they have it taken back to the circuit courts like Sean Cunningham wants, I don't see the Supreme Court picking it up. So ultimately, we're going to be in a situation where Victor Miller owns his part of the IP, Sean Cunningham owns his part of the IP. And what's going to have to end up happening is either one studio, that probably either being New Line or Paramount, or maybe both. New Line already owns a specific part of the IP to use Friday the 13th or Jason movies, rather. And Paramount kind of still has, I think, their standing library that they own. So I'm wondering if it's just monetary rights go to Sean and Victor, depending what is used, and they have to come to a deal to restructure that whole thing. But ultimately, it's still going to have to be where Sean and Victor make a deal with each other and ultimately come to terms on financial gain on what is used before something full-on Friday the 13th can be done. But I think the lawsuit, yes, we will see that very soon. I think maybe if it's not in July, maybe in the next 6 months we'll probably see something. But I don't think it's going to end there, because now you're going to hit a stalemate as far as people making a deal one way or the other. Unless Victor, because I don't think Victor's really into making a whole bunch of shit. And knowing that the IP for his part of Friday the 13th is relatively useless without the other half. Same thing with Sean Cunningham and Victor's half. Like, they both need to combine it. If both of them, because Sean's still going to make money on other projects. He's going to be fine. He's good. Especially with the grandfathered in merchandising deals, games, DLC, all that for people, new players that are still buying the games and doing all that. I still think he's going to make money off of it, but Victor Miller probably will not. So what I see, and what I might see end up happening is that Victor Miller's going to have his part of the IP and he's going to end up selling. How much he ends up selling for, that's going to be the question. Because I don't think he's going to come to any kind of royalty deal with Sean Cunningham at all. And will it be Sean that buys it? Probably not. I think it's likely going to be New Line or Paramount that buys that full-on outright from Victor Miller, and then maybe goes to a partnership with Horror Inc. and New Line. That's the best case scenario that I can see for things happening quickly, but I do not see Sean and Victor coming to a monetary deal. Mostly because Sean wants a ton of the money for himself. So it's going to be greed versus logic, and greed is going to win out. Devin says, how do you think Jason would react to a normal person killing people at Camp Crystal Lake, not dressed like him or anything, just like killing people? Well, I mean, we see something like that already in the comics. And Abuser and the Abused, Jason pretty much killed him. And that was kind of adapted in my old sequel story where it puts Jason in the snow, where the same character or a character based off that character was going around killing her so-called friends because, I mean, she snapped. She was there for revenge, used a snowstorm to keep everyone at the camp. They pretty much just trespassed there, kept the snow falling and so forth. I believe it was a point in time where the boyfriend attacks her and she stabs him and pushes him into the, not frozen, but it was cold water. Because, I mean, the blizzard just started happening, so the lake wasn't frozen over yet. At least I think. I got to rewatch that to get all my details right. It's been a while. But I know he falls into the water, and the blood from the wound and the overall hatred from the main character, which is also a killer, ends up resurrecting Jason. This takes place after part 7. I had it could go either part 6 or part 7, but I had in mind part 7 when I did it. So Jason doesn't have a mask on. He has the clothes all tattered and everything. But the boyfriend, who pretty much took the Jason legend, and now he's become a costume. He's become, this boogeyman that people dress up as. And he knew that they were going to Camp Crystal Lake, so he decided to put together the costume and play a prank on people, much like Shelly had the hockey mask, the green shirt, the khaki pants, the whole deal. When he gets pushed into the water, he's trying to get out, and I believe Jason grabs him after resurrecting and ends up taking the clothes and hockey mask off the boyfriend's dead body. Now, the way this kind of sets it up is that Jason ends up stalking the rest of the friends at the camp since they're stranded. It's blizzard. They can't drive anywhere. The roads are shut down. They can't go anywhere. So what ends up happening is some of them actually see Jason, but assume because they've already had the prank played on them that it's the boyfriend. So they don't feel any cause of concern. Meanwhile, our main character is also killing off some of these people. And at the end, they end up meeting. And if I remember right, I believe she tries to plead with Jason, knowing who he is, tries to plead with him like, I'm just like you. And Jason ends up killing her and taking her back to the shack, or the ruins of the shack, and begins rebuilding the shack again. Now, I didn't have it where he might pull like a Norman Bates and I think it was like Psycho 3 or 4, where he takes her head and creates a new shrine, thinking that, hey, this is my new mother's head. The way I had it in my mind as far as sequel goes after that is now Jason's back on the hunt looking for his mother's body. In full this time. Like head, body, everything. He wants to be reunited with her. And the way I was going to have it end is eventually he does complete that task. Him and Pamela basically become reunited and Jason loses his immortality. Ultimately ends up dying at the end, but him and his mother are together. I don't know if I have them burning together, where their ashes and so forth are, combined and Jason can rest in peace, or ultimately Jason's wounds cause him to die and they end up finally being buried together forever and moving on from there. Because ultimately I always looked at Jason's whole point after part 2 was he wanted to be reunited with his mother. He never wanted to leave that shrine, but he had to, considering the events of part 2 and knowing that the authorities were going to be around. Once they came around Packanack, they likely found the shack because those bodies were counted in, or the fresh bodies rather, were counted in the overall body count. But it's likely Jason's mother's head was recovered and probably taken somewhere else as maybe evidence, maybe buried somewhere else, or maybe they didn't have enough to identify her at the time. Who knows? But that's kind of the way that I would have went with it. Was Jesse secret Jeffrey Dahmer? I would like to think so. I would like to think that Freddy fucking with him so much fucked his mind up to the point that he actually became a killer and took on the Springwood slasher mantle, even without Freddy in his mind. That's the way I would kind of go with it. Why was the Book of the Dead in Jason Goes to Hell? Was it just an Easter egg or does it mean something? It was originally intended just to be an Easter egg. However, Adam Marcus is coming out with a documentary and getting any kind of press on it, even back then when he first said it, is good. So pretty much putting a whole thing out there that Jason Goes to Hell reveals that Jason's a Deadite and so forth like that. It put a lot of attention to, so much in fact that there's videos all over YouTube. I have like 2 of them. Paris, I believe, has 1, where we explain either Jason is or isn't a Deadite. I mean, me and Paris are in agreement on that. We don't think Jason's a Deadite at all. But there are some counter arguments to that on other channels. But overall, to answer your question, I think it was just an Easter egg. Tyrone says, I wish they would just come together and restructure all continuity together. The only way to do that now, and it showed that it can be successful is pulling the same thing that Blumhouse did with Halloween 2018. I mean, there are some misses. There definitely are some misses. Leprechaun Returns is a big miss because they could have went back, even though they didn't. I felt like they didn't need Warwick Davis for that. It would have helped, but the guy that they got to play the Leprechaun was completely fine. I'm completely fine with that because they even make mention of why his look changes on there. But overall, like, I think that's the best way to do it. You have to restart the continuity from a certain point, erase and cut all the fat, and just give us all the meat. That's pretty much what you got to do in order for that to carry on. Toes, fingers, teeth. We can't have a Friday the 13th reboot without the iconic Shelly mask, adult Jason Voorhees, and Machete, or without the elements of the old timeline characters. You would think, but also that's why New Line didn't mention any of that. He's just there. I mean, that's why ultimately we didn't even get a resolution to how he got back to the camp after Part 8. And that, as Adam Marcus even admitted, he was told to pretty much retcon Part 8. Part 8 never happened, and because people didn't like it. So in that sense, it's a reboot in itself. Jason Goes to Hell was intended to be a reboot. So, I mean, that's why we have it where... Because I know a lot of people tried to theorize that Jason's mask is like that on his face because the toxic waste melted it to it. But then we also look at other things where, I forget where I read it at, but it said that Jason was wearing the mask for so long that the skin just started growing over it. But that can't be, because we know in Part 6, he didn't start with the mask. Part 7, his mask was broken off of him. Part 8, the mask was melted by the toxic waste, but he still pulled it off. So at what point in time did he have the mask on for so long that it fused to his face? Unless you're going by a completely different timeline and set of rules where he got the hockey mask, maybe from a different person that wasn't Shelley. Maybe he got the hockey mask and he put it on and he never took it off after that. Even through all of the deaths or anything like that. Like, he just kept coming back and the mask just stayed on him the entire time. Paramount and WB needs to share so we can keep continuity. I would hope they would, but it's unlikely. Paramount did not like the Friday the 13th series. They liked the money that it made, but they did not like it. New Line, the instant they got it, they instantly knew, well, it's a cash cow. We can make these movies for cheap and get good returns on, and we can eventually put them with Freddy. And that was the whole thing why they didn't do Freddy versus Jason sooner, is because essentially they didn't like a good portion of where the story was going with Freddy, or they couldn't control the narrative enough to keep Freddy looking strong all throughout the movie. I mean, Freddy did get his ass whooped here and there in Freddy versus Jason, but compared to what Freddy did to Jason, it was very, very lopsided. In the dream world, we had Freddy play Jason like a pinball machine. That is, as a Jason fan, that's wildly disrespectful. That was cringeworthy when I saw that in the theaters. So, I mean, they knew what they were doing when they got it. And that's why they only wanted the Jason license. They didn't want everything else that came with it, the entire library, because they just wanted Jason. But now they're at a point where they either have to buy the rest of it from Paramount to use their video library, or ultimately it's whatever comes with this deal that is going to have to be made between Victor and Sean or someone else. They definitely have to go back and maybe reboot from a certain point in time to keep things going and get things back on track. From the last movie that I guess you could say was successful, go from there. That was both critically and financially successful, because I think all of them were financially successful. Jason breaks the rules of horror because he kills virgins to the Latina chick he shot in the eye with the harpoon was a virgin, potential final girl. So was Shelley. Oh, nice. I mean, yeah, definitely. Because, I mean, Jason was an innovator in the slasher genre. Because, I mean, we had, like, kills in other movies, but nothing to the degree of Friday the 13th. There was nothing like that. But once we got to the point of, like, after so long, it just became about the kills and nothing else. Where the original timeline did have a set story. They knew where they wanted to go up to part 4. They knew how Jason... Well, they didn't know. They were going as they went. But, like, basically, it was like they kept continuity enough to where Jason finally got killed. Okay, that's done. Jason is dead. We went from Pamela to Jason. Now we're passing the torch to Tommy. We had Roy in there as sort of a catalyst to help push Tommy along. Tommy's going to be set up as the killer. But then everyone blew the fuck up. And next thing you know, we're back at Jason again. I read the funniest thing on the internet. They say that Freddy Krueger could be Nancy's father. I heard something like that too. I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. At the end of the movie, they should have James as like a paramedic or something, counting the dead bodies. Who's James? You didn't read the Wildstorm main story where it opens with the blonde naked counselor being helped by the old couple in an RV and her and the fellow counselors explain the Crystal Lake curse. Is that like the 6-part series of Wildstorm? Because I think I have those comics. I have the actual physical comics from when they first ran. But it's been years. I've read them when they first came out and never touched them again. What's going on, Surgical Duke? How do Freddy use Nancy's dead body to kill her in Nightmare 3? Because he's a shapeshifter. And as Nancy says, when she, when Kincaid stabs Freddy, I believe it is. Was it Kincaid that stabbed? I think it, like when he gets the rod to the gut and he pulls it out and starts licking. Nancy even says he's strong. He's never been this strong. Not to mention, Freddy did take the forms of other people in Nightmare 1. Because he does take the form of Tina, using her image to pretty much taunt Nancy in the body bag and so forth like that. He also takes the image of another girl with pigtails wearing the sweater. Like if you recall, Nancy, no running in the hallway. Like that scene. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could take the form of Nancy's father to trick her. A Blumhouse Elm Street should pick up with Alice and her baby all grown up, ignoring Freddy's dead in A New Nightmare. Well, A New Nightmare is going to be ignored regardless because it's outside of continuity to begin with. If they were going to pick up from anywhere with A Nightmare on Elm Street, it's either going to be picked up after part 3 or part 1. And if they do it after part 1, I can see it being very close to my story concept that I put up. Which, let me know if you guys want. I can play the story concept on the stream. I mean, I got nowhere to go. Blumhouse needs Friday the 13th. Actually, no. I mean, a place... I don't want Blumhouse turning into Platinum Dunes, where they have one good hit, like Platinum Dunes did with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and everyone just flocks to them expecting the same success. Now, the people at Blumhouse did well with Halloween because they were very big fans of Halloween, of the original. So they took that and their love for overall 80s slasher movies and combined that together into a very good treatment, I think. Giving them Friday the 13th too, that would be tough. That would be tough for them to recapture that. And I don't know if they'd be burnt out on Halloween because they're going to be doing Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. And if Halloween Kills and Ends keeps going well, then that means less time is going to be devoted to something Friday the 13th, because you would want those same makers that are doing the Halloween movies over on Friday the 13th. But also with David Gordon Green also helming the Hellraiser TV series for HBO, that's going to be a tough one too. There's a lot of Jason talk about what's supposed to be. Let's talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. That's because we keep bringing up Freddy versus Jason, and it keeps taking us full circle around, Paris. But we are talking about a Nightmare on Elm Street now, though. I mean, as far as like the timeline reboot. Just Anthony brought up why Blumhouse should have Friday the 13th. Just kind of going over my thing, because I wouldn't want Blumhouse to get a Nightmare on Elm Street either. I would want someone else to get a Nightmare on Elm Street and just use the building blocks that Blumhouse use, like erasing sequels and starting a new story based on the original, or giving us a certain point in time that you decide to cut the cancerous parts of the series off and go forward. And New Line had Freddy take the killing blow on Jason before Laurie distracted him. Yes, exactly. And that's with a fucking hand in Freddy's chest. Like that. Oh, James Dead Meat? Oh, yeah. That. Did he actually do that? Or was there too many bodies for him to count? I haven't watched the Freddy versus Jason kill counts. He's strong. He's never been this strong. Exactly. Freddy got stronger having Jesse spread the fear to kids all over Springwood. Not exactly, no, because it wasn't Jesse that helped spread the fear. It was Freddy just being at the pool party. He used Jesse's body. It was still Freddy that did it. It wasn't Jesse at all. And there was no indication that any people knew who Freddy was. I mean, they caught a glimpse of a guy in a red and green sweater and a hat. But even then, that part of the Freddy storyline isn't there yet. Because Freddy at this point can only attack in the dream world Elm Street kids. Which still doesn't make sense of why he was able to get into Jesse's dreams. Which I did theorize before. When Nancy turned her back on Freddy, it trapped Freddy in that house. So once Jesse and his family moved into that house, Freddy was haunting that house individually. But once he was able to latch on to Jesse, it broke those confines, and Freddy was able to once again be out in the dream world attacking the Elm Street kids. That, I think, is why he needed Jesse more than anything. Killing the kids were a plus that weren't Elm Street kids, but ultimately he needed Jesse in order to break the chains that Nancy placed on him at the Elm Street house. Play the story concept? I'll play the story concept. Let me read a little bit from the chat before I do that. Do you think the Nightmare on Elm Street TV series was good? I think it was good for an anthology movie at the 80s. But I mean, it could probably be done a lot better now considering how far along we've come. Am I joining the 4th year anniversary live stream for DBD, by the way? Yes, I am. Robert says, Freddy's Nightmares and TV. Yeah, Tyrone, Freddy's spirit was just stuck with the parents of the Elm Street kids. His spirit was only stuck with the parents of the Elm Street kids? And how was he able to attack the Elm Street kids? Because that means he would only be able to attack the parents. But the whole thing was especially from what we see in part 3, all the Dream Warriors all have in common that they're Elm Street kids. They're the last. Well, that's why even in part 4, Kristen says, I'm the last. And Freddy's trying to goad her and pulling someone else in. If Kristen would have died in that dream world or held onto her power instead of giving it to someone else, Nightmare on Elm Street's movies are over. They're done. What's going on, Blood Spider? How you doing? Oh shit, let me go back. I think Halloween 2018 is a little overrated, I think. I mean, opinions. I mean, nobody is wrong and when it comes to movies because it's all subjective. I personally liked it because I thought it was a throwback to the 80s slasher movies of old compared to the over stylized and fucking CW-esque slasher movies that we have been getting outside of maybe Rob Zombie movies. So maybe I looked at it from a bit more nostalgic sense than I should have. But I know when I watched the movie in the theater and the low budget feel of it, the grittiness of it that I got from the movie, the look of Michael Myers, the way he was killing people, the just overall story, I dug every bit of it. But I mean, I can see where you think it's overrated because people did blow it out proportion. But, you know, it is opinion. Everything is opinion and completely subjective with that. Blood Spider says, why did they cancel the new A Nightmare on Elm Street TV show? What was going to be connected to the new TV show? I don't think they did cancel it. They canceled the Friday the 13th TV show, and that was because of the lawsuit. The Nightmare on Elm Street TV show, that was an idea that was being kicked around, but it was never anything that was concrete. Tyrone says, Freddy, once resurrected by the Dream Demons, must have originally was attacking parents before he circled the wagons to kids prior going to attack Tina off screen. If that was the case, wouldn't Tina's mother have been killed? Wouldn't Nancy's parents have been killed? Wouldn't Glenn's parents have been killed? Granted, we don't see any of the other Elm Street kids' parents at that point in time, at least not that I can remember. But maybe in part 4, we see Joey's parents, maybe. We assume that Kincaid's living with his parents. We see Kristen's mother. We even see her in part 3. So I would kind of dispute that theory. How damn long is Elm Street in Springwood? It's gotta be one of those streets that like split and like, you know what? This is Elm Lane, but we're considering part of it because, you know, it was a cross between over there. What's going on, horror fan? How you doing? You turned 38 today. Well, happy birthday, my friend. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors. When that girl's head went through the TV, how the heck did people think that she did that on her own? That would be a good question. Because for the most part, a lot of Freddy's kills were considered homicide or suicide. I don't know how you sit a girl in a room by herself and she lifts herself 2-3 feet off the floor and puts her head with enough force through a TV. Those old TVs, that shit ain't easy. Let alone if you're up on something, and I don't believe there's any furniture in the room that could get you that high. So you would have to jump into it. And something tells me you would fall a couple of times. And with the orderly standing outside, wouldn't they hear something? That would be peculiar. Plus, how do you have psychotic kids in a mental ward of a hospital and there's no cameras? None. There's no surveillance. That's weird too. What's going on, Sebastian? Oh, I'm good, Blood Spider. I am doing well. Actually getting ready to put on my old video of my Nightmare on Elm Street story concept. Let me go ahead and find that while we're chatting it up. How would I do Freddy versus Jason? Now that I think of it, I think it's probably close to the story that I said before, where I think it's a good idea to have Freddy take control of Jason's body and Jason be a prisoner in his own mind, and using maybe a new generation of Elm Street kids or something like that to possibly get into the mind of get into the dream world and release Jason. Now where are you? There's my Evil Dead one. I have to save that for an Evil Dead stream. What's going on, Harley? What's going on, Sebastian, as well? I used to have an Elm Avenue in my old town I lived in. There's my Nightmare commentaries. Where's my Nightmare sequel, though? Where are you at? Starting to realize why I unlist a good portion of my streams, because I think it's all my streams are active on my actual end of me looking at things, and it makes it so much more difficult to find anything. Oh, there we are. Let's see. Blood Spider says, oh, actually, Halloween fan, and Matthew also commented. Matthew says, I drove trucks for many years, and I've always wondered, with all the names in the world, why the hell does every city or town in America, why do we have this problem? Elm Street, Elm Inn, Elm Road. It's probably just a common thing when every single street name was taken. It was probably something. And, you know, we don't have this yet. Let's do that. Horror Fan says, I also love Nightmare 5 and 3. I mean, they're fun films. They're fun films, definitely. Especially Part 3. Part 5 is a bit odd with the Dream Child, but still fun. Blood Spider says, I think A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 could have been a good movie if it was a sequel to the original, but avoid all the other sequels like Friday the 13th, 2009. It could have worked. It could have worked. That's actually, you're just in time for that, Blood Spider. I don't know if you've seen my Nightmare story concept. I'm going to set up the story before we play the video, but I don't think if you've heard that yet, this should be a good treat for you then. Who inspired him to go after Dead Set on Tina, Rod, Glenn, Nancy, or did Freddy have a Kill Bill like list at the trial? I think because of him being in the dream world, he was sort of like was it the Schrodinger cat? He was everywhere and nowhere. So like pretty much as soon as you fall asleep, he's aware that you're asleep, at least in that original movie. Especially if you were connected to those bloodlines, I think is sort of like a dinner bell for him. Horror Fan says, also background, I got a 10 sign with that same artwork. Nice. Very nice. Every town has an Elm Street. I'm going to dress up as Freddy and scare the crap out of some people on Elm Street. I can't wait for my mask to come. I might do the same. Harley says, my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie is the first one. What's yours, guys? Mine's is part 2. Okay, now let me pull this up. I guess I should. Where's my. There we go. Oh, we're watching me. All right, that's not what I want though. There we go. That's what I want. That's what I want. Now I'm gonna bring that to full screen. I'm gonna mute my mic. And I'm gonna let you guys watch it. I'm also gonna take myself off. All right. Is it a realistic mask? Yes, it's done by Dark, who does a shit ton of silicone Freddy masks. Which, while I'm on here, I might show you guys exactly what it might look like. But ultimately, it's a realistic mask and a realistic burned hand. All right, now to set this up, this sequel pulls the Blumhouse effect on things. Nothing is canon to this story except the first movie. So pretty much just to give you that context, everything you saw at the first movie, that's what's going on. So let me actually take my logo off there since I already got a logo. Remember that Ghostface logo with that? The Ghostface behind the JG? But all right, I'm going to mute my mic, let you guys enjoy. Remember, this is only a sequel to the first movie. None of the other sequels exist. All right, here we go. Let's revisit that Nightmare on Elm Street movie idea. Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be another Nightmare on Elm Street video. Now this is going to be also related to my last Dark Theories video, which this will probably fall under that banner as well, since I'm going to be expanding the idea for the story for a new Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. Now, like I said before, this is going to take the Blumhouse approach to A Nightmare on Elm Street, erasing every sequel after part 1. So without further ado, let the games begin. The film starts with the silhouette of a woman walking down the same wet tunnel that we saw Tina walking down in the beginning of the first film back in 1984. The woman continues on, exploring the now seemingly withered, old, cold boiler room, now shown to be even wearing the same white nightgown as Tina. The woman approaches a large furnace where she can hear the screeching sound of Freddy's claws against the iron. Peeking in through an opening, the woman sees eyes staring back at her with an intense anger, and a voice is heard in a deep, serious tone. Nancy. It's revealed that the woman is indeed a much older Nancy, who has seemingly kept Freddy in prison ever since their last encounter, where she took his strength by turning her back on him and showing she's not afraid, inadvertently giving Nancy the ability to shape the dream world however she wanted, and everything in it, including Freddy himself. Taking away his burned visage and replacing it with his human appearance, Freddy is now much older due to his imprisonment within Nancy's dream world, aging as she does, with no one's fear to fuel him. However, this last visit is different. Freddy can feel the fear coming off of Nancy this time, but she's not afraid of Freddy. She's dying, and soon. And she's afraid of what Freddy may do if her plan to keep Freddy captive and aging until he dies doesn't work. And he's once again free to kill a new generation of children. Freddy will taunt Nancy, saying he can feel her losing her grip. Nancy will ultimately succumb to her fear, inadvertently recharging Freddy enough to allow him to break free from his furnace prison, until she has a heart attack and dies as Freddy smiles. He refuses to let Nancy's soul pass on, wanting to torture her in her own dream prison as she sits helpless and bearing witness to the future atrocities to come. 6 months will go by as Freddy will regain his power little by little by chipping at the fear of a new group of teenagers, the now grandchildren of Elm Street, until one night he invades the dreams of another young teenage girl in the same alley he appeared to Tina in, while stretching his arms. This time, Freddy is much more direct, first letting his shadow be seen at the end of the alley, similar to what he did with Tina. Only this time, when the girl turns to run, she runs into the blades of Freddy's glove. This time, however, the overwhelming fear and the murdering of the teenager begins to de-age Freddy, making him look younger as his burns begin to reappear. Freddy then will begin to murder multiple teenagers throughout this story, as Nancy is forced to watch, and Freddy taunts her as with every scream and kill, he grows younger and more powerful. At some point in the story, the final girl will discover Nancy in the furnace prison from the beginning of the film, and Nancy will be released. She will tell the final girl how
Tyrone
to take
Kennard
Freddy's
donated
power
5 through Super
before
Chat.
passing on and leaving the dream world forever. The final confrontation with Freddy will play out with Freddy and the final girl face to face, with the girl using the information provided by Nancy to turn her back on Freddy, only to hear Freddy's laugh, and saying how Nancy didn't tell her the cost of what she's trying to do, telling her about the constant strain Nancy was feeling from holding him for all of that time, knowing that the moment you lose your grip, I'll split you in two. The final girl hesitates and seemingly wakes up to a bright morning and being greeted by all of her thought to have been dead friends. As they open the front door and leave for school, the final girl walks through the doorway and into the furnace prison. As Freddy closes the door behind her, smiling, locking her in the dream world as he takes control of her physical body with plans to rekindle his Springwood slasher killing spree once again while humming the familiar nursery song. And that's it, guys. That's my brief Nightmare on Elm Street possible sequel, reboot, timeline kind of story. It's not as in-depth as my Friday the 13th one, since I used a lot of comic book elements in my Friday the 13th one, and this is more so just running with an original concept that I thought up myself. Maybe pulling some little elements from the other films, like Nancy being able to control the dream world, similar to the Dream Masters in Part 4. Even the cold boiler room, because Freddy's presence is locked away, that's again coming from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. But let me know what you guys think. Would you want to see this on screen, maybe fleshed out a little bit better with someone with a little bit more writing experience than me? Or would you like the story as is, just maybe the final girl actually being named instead of just being called the final girl? Or would you want to see something completely different? Comment below and be sure to like, share, and subscribe, as well as hitting the notification bell to be alerted whenever a new video is uploaded. And if you want to join my commentary streams, from what I hear, they're a lot of fun. And as always, I am JG Dark, and thanks for watching. It's actually been a while since I actually listened to that, and I still very much like it. Interesting. Very interesting. Again, Tyrone, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. You didn't even put anything in the comments. You just like donated. I'm like, oh. I wasn't on camera to thank you personally, but thank you again, my friend. Matthew says, I think in order to sell it to the fans, they have to cast a no name, possibly a good stage character actor, but not a well-known actor in the movies. I agree. Because to me, I've always held the belief that if you have a iconic character like Batman, Superman, fucking Jason, Freddy, Michael Myers, you don't need a big name, especially for Jason and Michael Myers. You don't need a big name under the mask. But for Freddy especially, you just need someone that can capture the elements of the character. The name itself, Freddy Krueger, sells itself. That puts fans in the seats. A big name isn't going to do that. Maybe for mainstream people that needs to see anything that supposed star is in. But then at that point, you're spending all your budget on this big name and not enough on effects. So it's really not worth it. And then your movie crashes and fails because of it. What would be your original imaginative kills? An original character for Freddy for this concept. I didn't get that far to think of what I would do as far as kills, because I just thought of overall where I wanted to take the narrative. I didn't have kills in my mind when I was creating the story. I just wanted to carry the narrative in order to bring back A Nightmare on Elm Street, and a lot of my attention was taken off getting Robert Englund back in the role without having to really put on much of the makeup and keeping his age as he is now, and giving us a reason for those for switching the actor. Like as Freddy's killing, the screams of his victims, as they said, like it was the screams in the first one that gave him his power. And that's when Nancy turned her back on him, the fear and all that, like took all the power out of him. I wanted to make it that he was gaining that power again, and it was making him younger. And ultimately, because of that, he wanted to make himself kind of more grotesque. Like the burns are more defined, and the characteristics are a lot different. Maybe similar, because you can do that with special effects makeup, as we see from Paul Bailey. We can definitely see that. But at least close enough to the original makeup to be recognizable and go from there. That was the original concept of what I wanted to do and carry the narrative forward for more sequels. Thank you, Harley. Thank you. Tyrone says, would it be gore porn cut away kills like Halloween 2018, or cartoonish comedic legitimately scary kills? I think if I was going to do it, the way I would want to do it is I would want to have the kills, like in the first movie, double as either homicide or suicide. Granted, the Glenn kill, that's still a toss-up. That's clearly something's not right there, like supernatural wise. I would have liked to have seen, or I might even have brought it up. I didn't bring it up in that story, but now that I think about the Glenn kill, I wonder if you can try to say that maybe he exploded. Maybe, because I don't think there was Glenn's body was ever found. I know there was a deleted scene where his body, Johnny Depp rose back out of the bed and just collapsed over. Which at that point, where the fuck did the blood come from? But if we're looking at the blood hitting the ceiling and so forth, that's a bit harder to explain. But ultimately, I would want to keep the kills subtle, and I would want them to kind of have the same impact that Rod's death had. Like hanging someone in their cell. Maybe when two people are going to sleep, two teenagers are going to sleep together, having sex, doing whatever. Freddy kills one and frames the other one for the murder. Like things like that to bring the drama out of the story. But definitely not complete gore porn. Not Freddy slicing someone down the middle or playing with their guts or anything like that. I wouldn't do that. I would want to keep it completely in line and with the same tone that the original movie had. Alright, we'll see you when you get back. Grab those erasers. Blood Spider says, I like all your videos, JG. The thunder in the beginning and the ending always make my heart jump. That's the intention. Now imagine, because I mostly edit those videos at night, and I'm in bed. I have my laptop hooked up to my TV, especially now my new 60-inch TV. I have that hooked up to it, and I have a surround sound system hooked up to that, so all around our bedroom. So when Amanda's sleeping next to me, and I'm editing these videos, I wait for it to get dead silent, very quiet, and then I'll add certain things here and there, placing the lightning parts in a particular place, never listening to it. And just wait for the right moment. It's completely quiet. And then I hit play. And I let that thunder just rip. And Amanda jumps so high off the fucking bed that I am usually laughing for 4 or 5 hours afterwards. Like you just hear the crackling of the thunder and lightning, and she just jumps the fuck out of bed. It's completely hilarious. I'd be happy to help you write it with more detail, but I have a feeling you and I probably be a better team on a Friday story. I mean, Friday the 13th is where I excel, definitely. But I do have a sense of certain stories, like if I'm doing things like cutting off sequels, I'm doing that for a particular purpose. I'm not just cutting off sequels because it's a trendy thing to do. I'm cutting it off for the purpose of a good narrative. And if I'm going to take that narrative, I'm definitely going to incorporate the films that I'm keeping canon. And because of my knowledge of Friday the 13th, that's a lot easier to do. I got a couple different Friday the 13th sequel concepts on my channel. One of which is a pretty good remake that I did that involves Pamela Voorhees and another killer, which that I might play on the next Let's Talk, because we're going to be going back to Friday the 13th. We're going to be talking about Final Girls, but we're going to be talking about Friday the 13th in general next Tuesday. What's going on, Buff Clash? How you doing? You found me. I didn't know you were looking for me. What would your Freddy makeup look? Realistic burn victim, a Navi chipmunk, or his classic movie look? His classic movie look from part 1. That would be my intention to use for this one. Part 1, as much as I love part 2, I want to keep it consistent with part 1. Because they even had little details like his ears were charred. And I like that. What have you been looking for me on, Buff Clash? You been looking for me on YouTube? Because, I mean, I assume you have found my channel. I'm not that hard to find. Oh, you were on my Jason Voorhees reveal thing. Oh. Okay. Nice. Well, welcome. Glad you found me. Glad to have you aboard, my friend. What's going on, Random Rick? See, we got a couple of new people joining up. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, that just hearing that story concept again makes me want to get back into it and start creating more stories. Like I said, I had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one that I want to do, but I'm not exactly sure where to take it and if it will have this same effect when I reveal it. Oh, no problem, Buff. No problem. No problem. Like, I try to answer everybody. I mean, I at times can't answer everyone because there's usually some people all talking all together. But I try to answer as many people as I can. The worst times to try to ask me a question is usually when I'm playing Killer on Dead by Daylight, though. Because I'm usually very focused on killing survivors and tracking them that I normally don't pay much attention to chat until afterwards. I'm glad you feel so happy, my friend. Definitely glad to have you. That's what makes me feel good. Freddy Krueger gave you nightmares for 10 years. Watched it when you were 5. Oh, man. Which one did you watch that gave you nightmares? Or did you watch all of them and it gave you nightmares? Because I am putting together a part 2 costume. So if part 2 was probably the one that you watched, you might tune in on that particular stream when I get that mask and everything, that you may relapse. Because I'm planning. I already got the teeth. Done. The veneers I have. I got my hat. I got my sweater. I got my glove. I got my pants. I got my boots. The only thing I'm waiting on is my contact lenses, which are yellow and red, similar to the ones that he wears in the film, and the silicone mask and burned hand. That's the only thing I'm waiting on. I actually thought Freddy was real, so freaked out. Oh, yeah. Dream Warriors. I actually had nightmares about Dream Warriors. No other part in the movie except the beginning when he's chasing Kristen through the little tunnels and everything. When she's running, she's holding the kid, and you see in the background Freddy's shadow chasing after her. That gave me nightmares. I had dreams about that. If I were in a nightmare movie, how do you think you'd die or survive? Likely, it would probably be me in a plane because I'm afraid of heights. And the plane probably crash and fall into the ocean because I'm not a good swimmer. So that'd probably be how I die. You don't know what to say, Harley. One of us. Texas Chainsaw Massacre in space. Well, then that really wouldn't be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre now, would it? Not unless the spaceship's called Texas. Oh, okay. I thought I was like, wait a minute, did I have a Freddy reveal? Because I know I did some things with Jason, but I wasn't sure. But now that you mention it, the whole Freddy video, yeah. So you were there, enjoyed every second of it. Nice. I'm glad you like it. I got much more to come. I'm trying to flip some things up because I don't want it to be all Nightmare on Elm Street all the time. I do have some a Halloween one that I'm working on. Always working on Friday the 13th ones. Just trying to find different aspects of looking at things and making sure things fit before I do that, because I mean Friday the 13th, that's my main. I got to do that right if I do anything. There are some more Nightmare on Elm Street ones. Like I said, story concept for Texas Chainsaw Massacre coming. A lot of things I'm going to be working on. Definitely a lot of things. Saying hello to say hello. Love seeing all those badges, Matthew. Like, really, especially the Michael Myers one. That being the newest, I love that. Oh yeah, that'd be a freak out moment too. The way Freddy had it, where he's like fucking just going by his veins, just knowing that he used his veins and arteries as like fucking puppet strings. That, yeah, I can see where you'd be freaked out for that. What if Freddy was in space? Like I said, if because I told Anthony that earlier, Blood Spider. If Freddy is only confined to Springwood, how exactly do you get him to space unless you pull a Brainiac thing from the Superman comics and some other media where he takes a part of the planet and shrinks it, or just takes a part of the planet and puts it into the spaceship? Would we have like some kind of alien or something like that use a tractor beam to pull Springwood up and keep that as a part of I guess alien history? And just ironically, Freddy just happens to be part of that land, so they take the curse of Freddy with them into space. At this point, it would be the Space Chainsaw Massacre. But I feel like it would demean the purpose, because why would you use a chainsaw in space? Because one would consider that to be very primitive technology, unless like you had a chainsaw that doubled as a lightsaber or something. I'd be trapped in a room with an Abby and a knife, and there'd be only one way out. I think most of us would fail in that sense. Was Freddy actually innocent because there are different timelines? No. In every single timeline, he was guilty of what he was accused of. There hasn't been a timeline to my knowledge that he was innocent. The only timeline that he wasn't a child killer was the 2010 movie. It seems to indicate that he was building up to that, but there is no evidence that he was one. What's the next Jason cosplay I'm planning? If I do any other Jason costume, it's going to be an extensive amount of time before I do it. It's likely going to either be Ghost Jason, or it's going to end up being Part 7 Jason. Which, if I do Part 7 Jason, I'm definitely going to want the silicone mask for it. If it's Ghost Jason, then that should be a lot simpler, because ultimately the clothes shouldn't be that hard to find, and the mask is pretty available. The hardest thing that'd probably be to get, which I know where to get, is the silicone hood and the hands. Oh, thank you, Matthew. Thank you. What about Cropsy from The Burning? Ain't he Jason Freddy-ish-esque slasher ripoff? I think you could make that argument. Harley Patterson. Freddy in space is probably the dumbest idea for a Nightmare on Elm Street series. I mean, that normally goes for any slasher that you put in space. They're not meant for that. The thing with slashers is they're used as like all around, like campfire stories, like Jason was, Pamela was. They're campfire stories. They're supposed to be very accessible. Like, you go around the corner of your neighborhood and you could run into one of them. Once you start removing them from the neighborhood or the campgrounds or anything like that and put them in space, it becomes very convoluted. and ultimately terrible. Very campy, very gimmicky, and ultimately never works narratively. Here's my question. In Freddy's nightmares, before they burned him, why didn't they just shoot him? They had him cornered because they wanted him to suffer. For killing their kids, there was the whole thing, eye for an eye. They were going to kill him either way, but they wanted him to suffer the most brutal way possible. And to my knowledge, the most worst ways to die is either drowning or burning. Emerald Warrior says if he were in space, it wouldn't be a nightmare on Elm Street. Although you possibly should have capitalized Street too, because a nightmare on Elm Street, not just Elm, because that means at least room for Elm Avenue and Elm Lane and stuff like that. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, it definitely should stay on Elm Street or be connected to the Elm Street kids. Like, he could attack other people in Springwood, but as long as the Elm Street element is there, someone is connected to the Elm Street kids. That's why in my story concept, I had it where after part 1, the other Elm Street kids that are already still alive, they end up going off to have grandchildren. And their grandchildren, their children, grandchildren. So there's multiple generations for Freddy to come after. Not just teenagers, but also adults. Like, he could still come after all of them because they're all the children of the people that burned him alive. Children and grandchildren. So it gave him a plethora of victims that he could actually go through. Oh, thank you, Jado Live Can. If I said that right. I hope I did. Thank you for the follow, my friend. All the way over from D Live. Excuse me if I'm not getting high-pitched enough while talking. My voice is starting to get a little dry as I'm like talking, which tends to happen with these extended Let's Talks about any of the franchises. But I enjoy it though. Silicone for J7? Yeah, definitely. You would have to go that way. Let me see what you said. Uber Michael Myers. God, no. Blood Spider says, the puppet kill is my favorite Freddy kill because it's both scary, creative, and funny. Yeah, very true. It does hold all of those elements together. Buff Clash says, this is my last question before I have a few questions about Freddy. Will you do different gaming videos? You mean like uploads or streams? Because I do a lot of Dead by Daylight streams. That's my main game. I am planning to finish Man of Medan. I did play Predator on the channel. And what else did I do? I think I played briefly Friday the 13th once, but didn't really... It doesn't really take that well unless I have a good lobby to play with. Random Rick says, love all your videos, by the way. Huge fan. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy them. Always appreciate that, where people are actually enjoying the videos, because I could just as easily upload a video, get 1,000,001 dislikes, and just people tell me to, like, fuck off. And, like, so, I mean, the fact that people like it and like the effort that I put forward, I definitely enjoy that. It makes it worth it completely. I keep doing this. Like, what the fuck am I doing? What am I doing here? Blood Spider says, if Freddy went into space, he would say, where in space am I, bitch? Oh man, the whole bitch thing, I'm not sure where that kind of comes. I mean, Freddy doesn't say bitch that often. But, like, I feel like we're hitting, like, Scary Terry situations with that, where everything's just bitch all the time. Haley says, yeah, I'd probably die either by my dad killing me, especially traumatizing for me, or if a Until Dawn-esque kind of style where Freddy's a Wendigo. I don't know. The whole the father thing kind of reminded me of what's her name, Tracy from Freddy's Dead, where he tried to use the father against her, and she just beat the shit out of him. Can you really control your dreams? I mean, I've had dreams where I was able to control it. Especially when you kind of become aware in your dream that you're dreaming. So, I mean, I've been able to do that once or twice. The only thing that gets me, even to this day, are zombie dreams. Because I don't like being bitten. At all. I don't like being bitten. I was bit by a dog. I do not like it. I haven't liked it for decades since. But, like, the idea of being eaten alive by a horde of people in general, not even just zombies, just people in general. It's like when you get cornered in a zombie dream and they ultimately, like, you're even if you realize it, like, wake me the fuck up, wake me up, like that's the thing that gets me. Matthew says those cursed road names: Elm Street, Elm Road, Elm Avenue. Buff Clash says, and the different timelines, was Freddy burnt in each one, or were some of them different? Yeah, they were burnt in every single one. Some of them seem to indicate that it was from a Molotov thrown into a small room. Others, as we heard from Nancy's mother, says they followed him back to his boiler room and lit the whole thing up by leaving a gas trail going out and lighting the match and throwing it. We got the one from Freddy's Nightmares where they follow him back to the boiler room and dump gasoline all over him and light him up. And we have the remake where they use the Molotov in that one to burn him while he was hiding out from the parents. Lord JG, you deserve the drink to wet the whistle. I'll probably be getting off here shortly so I can go eat and finish up some cleaning. But I should be fine for now. Random Rick, have you ever seen Tales from Elm Street on YouTube? It's a pretty good series. I don't think is that I think I did. Cause is that the guy that plays Freddy? Roberto? I forget his last name. Harley says, what is your favorite kill in Nightmare on Elm Street series? I mean, it's a weak kill, but for me it's always been iconic of Freddy. But so it's the scene in general. It's one of my favorite scenes is when Freddy's coming out of Jesse. He's coming out of Jesse's body and Grady's there watching Freddy come out of his friend's body. And he's freaking the fuck out. And he's trying to get out, but he can't. The door is locked. Freddy has the door supernaturally locked. His parents are on the other side. And Freddy puts on the hat, tips the brim to him, and is like smiling to him and everything. And just walks up to him. Grabs him by the throat. There's no fight in Grady at all. Picks him up the door. And then you just see on the other side of the door, the claws go through Grady's body and slices down. Now, you don't see the kill, but to me, it was very effective. And then when you cut back, you see Grady's body on the floor, and you cut to the mirror, and you see Freddy laughing in the mirror. And Jesse's just standing there looking at the mirror with the glove on. And Freddy's just dying laughing. No words were ever spoken by Freddy during that entire time. Just laughing. And to me, that was the most haunting version of Freddy that I have ever seen and haven't seen one since. So, weak kill, great scene. Elm City. What's going on, Vincent DeAndrea? Why does Freddy only use one glove? He'd be able to kill a hell of a lot more teams with dual gloves. Yeah, but he also wouldn't be able to pick up things. You imagine trying to tie your shoes with two gloves on like that? There'd be no way. Well, welcome to the stream, my friend. They should do a Freddy versus Sandman. That'd be that would be cool. zombie end of the world dreams gets me. Yeah, I mean, my thing is just because it's always the same imagery for me. The big thing that always sticks out in my head is the beginning of Day of the Dead, when the zombies are filling up the streets in their when the people are on the bullhorn screaming hello, and you see the zombies just filling up the street, staggering to them, even though you don't get too close to them except for a couple scenes where they reveal the one zombie with the tongue, a couple of other zombies coming out of theaters and other buildings and everything. But when they're looking down the street and you just see the horde just coming, it's just like, that got to me. Wait, what was that? Random Rick says a lot of people hated the 2010 reboot, but Freddy was actually more darker, so I don't know why some hated it. Ultimately, the look, as people have argued, he had a more realistic burn victim look, which turned a lot of people off because he kind of looked like a cat. Now, granted, that may be realistic to how burn victims look, but I argue that Freddy's not a burn victim because he didn't survive his burning. He was supposed to look monster-esque. He didn't look monster-esque. Then they changed the lore by, is he innocent? Is he not innocent? Should we sympathize? Should we not? It should never be that way. It should be pretty much Freddy is guilty from the beginning. We know he's evil. Or if you're going the innocent route, pull the trigger on it full on. Then it comes to the child killing. Switching from child killer to child molester. Like I said, they look like they were building up the child killer. But they never pulled the trigger on it. They showed him make it. Well, they didn't show him make it, but they do find the little cap with the blade on it in his secret lair. But ultimately, it was never said that he killed any kids when he was alive. So, I mean, there's that. I mean, I guess you can argue it's hinted at as much as his molestation of kids in the original series is hinted at. But a dead kid's body, that would be a little bit hard to hide. A little bit harder to hide than child molestation. So changing the lore, changing the look for no reason, saying they wanted to go back to a darker Freddy that didn't crack that many jokes when Freddy did make quite a few jokes. Freddy in the original film, he taunted, but he wasn't that much of a jokester. Though I think the only joke that we really got to see was the fingers. That was like his one joke, and that was even watch this. Everything else was like, gonna get you. Or when he hung Rod, he looking up at Nancy smiling. Or you could argue, you know, I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy. Like there's stuff like that, but he wasn't that jokey. And his jokes were morbid and dark. And maybe only funny to him. But with Jackie Earle Haley's jokes, a lot of them seemed ripped right from the original series. Like, how's this for a wet dream? We already heard that, part 4. So it was like, they wanted to do certain things. It was just the execution overall was not there. The look for Freddy was not there. The changing of the lore just hurt it even more. And the characters overall, except for Jackie Earle Haley was a really good Freddy. I could put that out there. But the characters that played Nancy, Quentin, all of them just looked like they did not want to be there. And they felt it throughout the entire movie. You can't compare the 2010 movie Nancy to the 1984 Nancy. Or 1980. It was 1984 and 1985. It's one of them. The original. You can't compare this Nancy to Heather Langenkamp. There's no way. There's no comparison at all. Same thing in the timelines. Did Freddy's mother always die by suicide? Because I've heard Freddy's mother apparently goes insane. We only see any word about Freddy's mother in part 3, 4, and 5. I don't think there's any mention in the remake. There's no mention in the TV show as far as my knowledge goes. and maybe the comics. The comics maybe mention something, but for the most part, the comics aren't canon, so you can't really go up. But it is a timeline, so you can use that. But as far as I know, it's maybe only the comics in 3, 4, and 5 that they mention her. Did you see an alligator on Day of the Day? Yes, I did. What if one of Freddy's victims was The Walking Dead fanboy? That would give us a pretty good zombie scene for a kill. Oh, excuse me. The scene when Freddy came out of Jesse scared me as a kid. It makes me laugh now. I mean, yeah, it's funny, especially when Freddy's looking up at Jesse like, "Oh, why are you screaming, man?" like gets himself out. But the scene overall shows how scary Freddy can be. And that movie overall made Freddy scary. I mean, look at the pool party scene when the father, Lisa's father, comes out with the shotgun and shoots at Freddy, and Freddy's just like hissing at him, showing his teeth, and stares him down and walks away. Like that was a pretty good scene. All right, guys. I think this was fun, but I'm going to have to wrap things up. I gotta run, try to do some things real quick, but I do want to thank you guys for joining. All the new people that joined as well, thank you. All the follows that we got on D Live, the subscribers, the followers on Twitch, Mixer, thank all you guys for joining. Those of you on Facebook that's watching, I want to thank you guys as well. I will be back tomorrow with some DBD gameplay and maybe some DBD or maybe Man of a Dam. We'll see how it goes, because I know I do want to try to get done a lot of those challenges. But I will see you guys then if you're coming back for the gameplay. After that, what's the day? Tuesday? Thursday, we'll be watching some Ash versus the Evil Dead. We'll try to cap that off. We'll get that done out of the way, and then the next commentary after that will be the Evil Dead reboot, and then that will cap off the entire Evil Dead series, and then we'll find a new thing to do commentaries on. But until then, I will see you guys. You guys have a great night, and as always, I am JG Dark, and thanks for watching.
Never laugh as a hearse goes by, for you may be the next to die. They wrap you up in bloody sheets to drop you 6 feet underneath. They put you in a pine wood box and cover you up with dirt and rocks. It all goes well for about a week, and then your coffin begins to leak, and the worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, the worms play pinochle on your snout. They eat your eyes, they eat your nose as you begin to decompose. A slimy beetle with demon's eyes chews through your stomach and out your sides. Your stomach turns to rancid grease, and pus pours out like melted cheese. You spread it on a slice of bread, and that's what you'll eat when you're dead. And the worms crawl out, the worms crawl in, the worms that crawl in are lean and thin, the ones that crawl out are fat and stout. Your eyes fall in and your hair falls out, your brain turns into maggot pie. Your liver starts to liquefy, and for the living all is well as you sink further into hell. And the flames rise up to drag you down into the fire where you will drown. Your skin melts off as you descend, and Satan tears you limb from limb. Your suffering will never end, and the worms crawl in, the worms crawl out. They'll eat your guts and then shit them out. And when your bones begin to rot, the worms remain, but you do not. So don't ever laugh as a hearse goes by, for someday you'll be the one to die. And when death brings his cold despair, ask yourself, will anyone care?